apologize for our delay.
It's all my fault.
Committee members have the current agenda for Tuesday, March 18th meeting in front of us. We have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? We also have our meeting minutes from February 25th. Pleasure of a motion there, please.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Next, we have executive session on the agenda. And before I ask for a motion, I ask that the applicants, please bear with us. We have just a few items that we need to discuss in the back room here. We will be back expeditiously, I promise. With that being said, can I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I move to go into executive session for discussion of legal advice from the town attorney on matters covered under the attorney-client privilege pursuant to South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, Section 30-4-70A2, related to affiliated agency funding request.
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. We are in executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, we are back from executive session. We will move on to item number 6. I'm going to invite Ms. Adriana Burnett to join us at the podium. As we do so, I just want to sort of lay out the expectations here today. We will take the applications up one at a time. Ms. Burnett will step us through them. We will give the committee members as well as our fellow colleagues in the room opportunity to ask questions of either staff or the organization. We will also have public comment on the organization's request. And then we will ask that council give staff direction on each one at a time, on the amount that we are looking to recommend to full council, okay? So that's the way we're going to step through these today. So Ms. Burnett, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, committee members and members of our community. This is the first time that I actually involved with affiliated agencies, and it is really a privilege to be able to do this, especially when we're talking about the community and the benefit that can bring to our community here at Hilton Head. I'm going to start by talking about the 14th Circuit Solicitor. Just be aware that there's no particular order here other than I'm just selecting one and I'm just going with it. So the committee has asked me to review the application and you have asked me to review the financials. I am not providing a recommendation. I'm just stating the facts and I'm trying to hopefully help you with supporting the decision and recommendation that you're planning to make. As we start talking, one of the things that I want to do in this committee meeting, divide the committee of this session into 3 portions. The first one is talking about the application and some of the financial numbers that I have seen. The second portion is talking about our MOUs or our agreements that we have with some of our partners. And I want to invite Angie Stone, our Assistant Town Manager, to join me for that. And then the third portion will be actually an introduction portion. I want to have the opportunity of introducing you to our Senior Grants Administrator that going forward, she will be responsible for the applications, both the affiliated agency applications and also ATAX. Okay. So the first one, as I mentioned before, the first one is the 14th Circuit Solicitor. There's 2 applications here. The first one is the career criminal application, and the second application is the multidisciplinary application. It is my understanding the person representing this application is not here this morning. So if there's any specific questions from the committee that I'm not able to answer, then I will have to probably take a note and get back with you with an answer. So the 14th Circuit Solicitor Office, if we start with the Career Criminal Unit, serves as the chief prosecuting agency for Beaufort, Jasper, Allendale, Colleton, and Hampton counties. This is the only 5-county circuit in South Carolina. The office is comprised of 66 full-time employees, including 26 attorneys. The ask is $168,500. The funding is going to be distributed as follows. For the Career Criminal Unit, there's $118,500, and for the Multidisciplinary Court is $50,000. As I'm looking at the information provided, I noticed that the last financial statement provided was from 2020. So it doesn't give me a lot of information, especially it's been 5 years. And I don't know if the numbers from 5 years ago are still applicable. However, they did provide a budget number, and that budget number includes revenues, includes expenses, and includes other personal information. So as I'm looking at the application, for instance, I'm looking at the first one, which is the Career Criminal Unit. It is my understanding from that application that it is based on personnel, so they want to utilize that money to pay for salaries. As I'm looking at the other section, is the multidisciplinary court. This one is based on programs that they actually pursue to train the people that apply for this, and they utilize the money to pay for those programs. And I want to read a little portion because there's a document that I feel like it is important to mention as it relates to this applicant. It's the measurement session. I don't know if you had the opportunity of reviewing that, but as it relates to the Career Criminal Unit, they're not a monetary in nature. Personnel is the primary expense. And so if I'm looking at primary expense being personnel, I see a $785,000 as it relates to salaries and benefits. And if I look at the other component, which is the multidisciplinary core, this one again is not based on money, but it's based on program. And they gauge the success of their undergraduation rate of defendants who plead into the program, and by the program's 2-year rate. And I noticed that in 2019, they started with 21 graduates, and in 2024, they have 34 graduates for the program. Again, the ask is $168,000, 118.5 going to the Career Criminal Unit, and 50,000 going to the multidisciplinary court. Another thing that I want to mention, in prior years, this particular applicant have received the amounts requested, and the same amounts, $50,000 again for the multidisciplinary, and for the Career Criminal, 118.5. So they have requested the same amount for the last 3 years. Any questions?
Okay, before we go to committee questions, is there an MOU with this organization that Ms. Stone needs to discuss with us? No?
I'm just
Perfect.
shaking her head. Nope.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Sandra, we'll start with you.
Okay, all right. I just had some general remarks about the affiliated agency process before we get into the actual applicants. First of all, I want to thank you and your team for putting all the information together associated with affiliated agency. That includes the applications. You provided a link to OneDrive so that we could see all the background information and additional materials that were to be added, and the summary that you prepared as well. And I read it all. It took a long time.
Oh, I believe you.
So just like the ATAX process, I think there's an opportunity to continue to improve the process. And I would ask that we do that for next year, especially how we define affiliated agencies, how we determine how much we spend in the decision-making process. And given this is my first time doing this, I had to think about what is my decision-making process. And for me, I think what you're going to hear some common themes is that we need to spend our tax dollars effectively and efficiently. And that is a filter that I'm going to be using whenever we talk about spending money. And so for me, as I look at the question of the primary beneficiary, I look at the scale of the benefits, meaning that the benefits should serve a large segment of the public. And so that weighs heavily in my decision-making process. So all of the applicants are very worthy organizations with worthy work. And so the question is it an affiliated agency, and should the town be spending money to support these organizations? When I look at the two areas for the solicitor's office, and I look at how many individuals are touched, it's a very low number. From the first, which is the Career Criminal Unit, there were only 11 individuals over the 6 years, and the prevention program, 45 individuals over the 6 years. So that lends me to feel that it, although worthy, I would not support funding.
Okay. Ms. Bryson?
Yes, thank you. I echo the remarks of my colleague with regard to the information we've been provided. So thank you very much to you and your team for all the detail to help us out. This program has kind of grown over the years, but as Ms. Tunner is saying, there's no clear process or no clear definitions and determinations. So we're looking at how do we walk through this, and also being mindful of we have an upcoming budget and trying to figure out how to manage that without a millage increase. And so we have a substantial amount of applications this year. So it's going to require a little bit more in our thought process of how to filter them. With that being said, as I look at the description on the screen of the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office, it says that the office serves as the chief prosecuting agency for a number of counties, 5-county circuit. And then if you look at the rest of the description, it all has to do with criminal prosecution. And in my experience, criminal prosecution is the responsibility of the state through its whatever systems of judicial system the state has established. And generally, municipalities don't have a responsibility with regard to that. So this is a different kind of service that we would normally not be providing. And also, there's no agreement, there's longstanding funding in the same amount, interestingly, but it's not the kind of service that the town would normally be providing. So it's a little more difficult to see how they're affiliated with the town, fulfilling a responsibility that the town might not be able to, or it might have decided not to fund or provide to find another agency to do that. So I have trouble with this agency in continuing the funding. It appears to me as though it's a different government's responsibility in light of looking at the funds available.
Thank you.
Okay, we have started to have this conversation a year ago with the solicitor's office as far as the potential of denying funding, okay? And we even offered up opportunities to have discussions with folks at the state level to fill this gap if it is not funded. So I think you're hearing what the direction of the committee is. I'm going to pause a moment and invite our colleagues to the podium so they can give their thoughts about the direction that the committee is leaning in. And if you agree or disagree, please let us know at this point. Mr. Alfred, we'll start with you, sir. Can you come up, Mr. Alfred? Because I want the people at home to hear you.
On the subject of the solicitor's office, I agree with the comments made. This is not a municipal function. It's a state or county function. And we should not continue to fund it, in my judgment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Desimone.
Good morning. The way I want to approach this is like I did in our two-day event and respect the committee process. And our discussions are offline discussions, and it's a trust of the committee, and that's why you're here, and I respect your decisions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Becker.
Thank you for the opportunity to join in the conversation, and thank you for the reports that are being given. And I think that you guys are the committee, and I do agree that to respect the committee's process and the decisions you come to. The question that I have that concerns me is the length of time from 2020 to 2025, where there's been no additional information submitted. And that I find concerning. I'd like to hear more about that and get that updated. The solicitor is an important part of our judicial system, and I respect the work that he does. And I've heard his presentations in the past with regard to these two different segments, and I think they're valuable. to the overall community, frankly. So I'd like to hear more about why the budget isn't updated for 5 years, and I respect the decision that you come to.
Thank you. Okay, any public comment on this particular agency? Seeing none, Ms. Burnett, on this particular item, I know you got someone taking notes. What I'm understanding from the comments from the committee and other council members is the recommendation here would be 0 to deny funding for this fiscal year for this organization. Okay,
Yes, our wonderful senior grants administrator is taking wonderful notes, so.
okay, thank you.
The second agency is Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation. And by the way, the descriptions that you see here are actually descriptions that we took out of their application. So this is not something that we're reinventing the wheel, trying to come up with a purpose. So this actually came from their application. So as it relates to the Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation, they work to transform underutilized properties into productive assets, boost the local tax base, and create job opportunities for the community, with a focus on diversifying the county's economy and promoting responsible growth. The Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation has facilitated 75 projects since its establishment in 2017, generating $503 million in investments and creating or retaining 2,081 jobs. The ask is $42,000 for this year, and I'm trying to see here, and the ask the year before was $40,000. The ask in 2024 is $40,000. The ask in 2023 was $25,000, and 2022 was $25,000. As I'm looking at the financial statements, I noticed that the total income, it is down between 23 and 24. It is down by 38%. So I started looking at why is there such a big decrease? And I noticed that for 24, there was a line item that was the county site and job fund income that was reflected, but it was not reflected in the latest year. So there was a change in income as well between $740,000 to $65,000. I don't know the reason why they don't have the same level of income, but that is a big decrease in their total income. As it relates to cost of goods sold, they also have a decrease of 20%. And the line item that is actually reflects this decrease is the spec buildings cost, excuse me, of $182,000. That is not reflected in 2024. So as I'm looking at the whole gross profit, the total income minus the cost of goods sold plus the gross profit amount equates to about 46%. So it is a big jump in gross profit. It went from $905,000 to $489,000. As I'm looking at the expenses also went down, but not as much as the income level. It only went down by 3%. So as it relates to net income, they are showing a net loss for fiscal year 24 compared to the year before. In 2023, the net income was $338,000. In fiscal year 24, there's a loss of $61,000. So that is a big difference between both years. And that's all the information that I have for them. Any questions?
It's the request from Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation is $42,000 for this year. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, and is there an MOU that we need to discuss with Angie? No? Okay, perfect. I will start with Ms. Bryson this time.
Thank you very much again for the information. I'll just say ditto every time. But thank you very much for that. It's interesting that economic development is a function of a local government. A municipality and a county both often have economic development, either a director or a department. We don't have that here, but we have worked well with the Economic Development Corporation over the years. It's funded by various municipalities and the county. Beaufort, Bluffton, Port Royal, the town of Hilton Head Island. Also, the county provides funding. So it's using several different entities who alone would have to spend a lot more money to have economic development. And certainly economic development is important to us. If you look at our plan, you see that trying to find, to grow our economy and to find other ways to support our local economy. So this is very helpful. Also, if you look at the report that was provided, to the amount that was provided over the years in economic development, it's impressive. The impact on annual net revenue, and then the town is projected to see a positive net revenue impact of 4.4 million as a result of economic development. So it's certainly an agency with whom we should have a relationship because we don't have our own economic development department or director. So I see a different relationship here as compared to the previous agency. I would support this funding amount this year.
Ms. Turner?
Yes, economic development, I believe, is critically important. And when I put together my list of the top 5 priorities from a strategic plan, my personal one includes economic development. It is so important for us to diversify our tax base and to provide jobs. So I'm very supportive of the $42,000 ask. And based on Ms. Bryson's comments, the $42,000 provides a terrific return on investment for the town, so very supportive.
Okay, I too am in supportive of the work that the Economic Development Corporation is doing. They've got great leadership over there. Our very own mayor sits on the board, so this is a case where we invest in what we value. Obviously, is very important to us. Okay, so before we move on, we get y'all steps in today, guys. Sorry. Councilwoman Becker, can we hear what you're thinking on this one, please?
Just like to say thank you for the opportunity, but also I respect the committee's process on this, and I do not disagree in the direction that you're heading.
Thank you. Mr. DeSimone? Okay, sounds good. Mr. Alfred? I support. Okay, Mr. Alfred supports as well. Okay, we've got the notes on that one. Any public?
Can I just add one point of clarification?
Absolutely, please.
I'm John O'Toole, the Executive Director of the Beaufort County Economic Development Corp. Just with the income looking like it drops, I'll explain this, that we presently get 1.3 mils from the county for product development. And so we use that for due diligence, we use it for appraisals, engineering, and for purchasing. And we'll hopefully in the next business week approve some funds for Beaufort, for Hilton Head. And I should add, I'm a resident of Hilton Head, so I'm invested here. But we only draw those funds when we use those funds. So in fiscal year 23, 24, those funds were $500,000. In the current year and for the next 5 years, we're going to get a 1.3 mil set aside, which is using today's dollars, $3.5 million. So the income actually grew, but it doesn't show on our balance sheet unless we draw those funds down, and we're not in a hurry to do it. We want to pick the right projects in each community, and we're identifying some in Hilton Head as well as the other community. So the income actually grew tremendously, but we put that in a fund and draw it down as we need it. So just wanted
Thank you for the clarification.
We're not in revenue crisis. We're actually booming, but we're picking the right spots. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, Adriana, we're good with direction on this agency, correct? Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on, please.
The next agency is the Coastal Community Development Corporation. This agency seeks to increase the availability of homes for our local and regional workforce by preserving existing housing, redeveloping existing property, and developing new property to meet the demand of our region while serving working residents. The CCDC was founded with the belief that the housing crisis that we face in Beaufort County and surrounding areas is an imminent threat to our quality of life. The ask is $750,000, and they're planning to allocate the funding in two different ways. The first one is a down payment capital for purchase of affordable workforce housing for $700,000, and the second one is administrative operations for $50,000. Looking at their financials, unfortunately, I didn't have anything to compare for prior years. I'm looking at the 2024 numbers. They are a calendar year agency. They do reflect a total revenue of $1.9 million. Looking at their net amount, they reflect a $61.5 thousand net. And one interesting factor, and as I'm looking at the balance sheet that they provided, they show no liabilities in their balance sheet. I mean, so it sounds to me that they are doing well. They don't have any liabilities. Again, this is an assessment based on 1 year. I don't have any trend. I don't have a way of seeing what is the trend for the last few years. So total assets is $188,000. And again, no liabilities for this agency.
Okay. And is there MOU that we need to discuss at all, Angie?
There is an MOU in place with the CCDC.
Okay, all right, thank you.
One thing that I failed to mention, as it relates to this agency, they have applied in 2025 to receive $600,000. So that was the first application I see in our records, $600,000 for 2025.
Okay. So the amount on the table for the Coastal Community Development Corporation is $750,000.
Yes, so it went up to $750, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Turner.
All right. So, significant increase from the request in prior years. Interesting, no liabilities. I don't quite understand how that's happening. I thought they were putting cash down and then mortgaging the properties that they purchased, but that doesn't impact my decision. The first piece is they asked for $50,000 in administrative costs, but in the affiliated agency grant, it says the administrative budget is funded through donations from local businesses and residents, which total in excess of $100,000 in 2024. So that just made me question why they were asking for $50,000 for affiliated agency for administrative options, given that comment. The other is, again, my comment about efficient and effective use of funds. So last year, there was $600,000 to purchase 14 units. And when I look at that cost, 600,000 divided by 14 units, that's $42,857 per condo unit that the town is contributing. That's really expensive if you think about trying to support workforce housing. And just for fun, I took the North Point project and said, if we had which is at 160 units, if we were funding that at $43,000, we'd be spending $6.9 million on North Point, and we're not spending anywhere near that. So that shows a much more efficient use of funds. So based on that, I am not supportive of this grant request.
Okay. Bryson.
I'm looking at it through some slightly different lenses. I'll say lenses plural, as though I have bifocals. I don't, but at any rate. So as part of our current strategic plan, workforce housing is an important element. We adopted Finding Home in 2022. And so I see it as an important function that the town council has previously adopted, and that is to try to help with workforce housing in some way. As I've said before, we can't do it all. It's a menu of opportunities, and this corporation was set up to provide some opportunity of that menu. In addition, the town of Hilton Head, the previous town council requested a change to the ATAX statutes to be able to use some funds for workforce housing. I think it's important that we continue to do that because we would like to continue to have that financial source to provide opportunities, looking carefully at those opportunities and making sure it's a good investment of funds available, while being mindful of the other agencies and community activities that we fund through ATAX dollars. I was wondering, as I understand it, at the time, Community Development Corporation asked for funding, then the proper process, they were told, was to come through affiliated agencies, and that's how they landed here. I've described this process as growing like Topsy, and so that's why we're in need of a little more structure in how to make our decisions, and we're talking a little bit about how to structure that today. So I look back at our budget for 24-25 to see how we had allocated ATAX funds for housing. And we have a housing fund, a separate fund called a housing fund. And for the budget for 24-25, it's $4 million. $1 million comes from state ATAX, which is what I'm talking about. Another prior year housing funds of $2 million, and prior year funds from ARPA, American Rescue Protection. I can't remember what ARPA stands for, but some sort of American Rescue Association. Thank you very much. Of $1 million, for a total of $4 million. And then I looked to see how those funds were to be allocated. And the town has some workforce housing projects as well. Ms. Tunner mentioned North Point, and we've set aside $1 million of that $4 million for North Point. Then the town also purchased some property on Bryant Road in the Muddy Creek area, and we've set aside in the budget $1 million for the Bryant Road project. And then also recognizing that that property is part of a larger neighborhood that we thought needed some more opportunities. And so we've created the Muddy Creek Neighborhood Stabilization CIP, and that amount is $1.5 million. We also have an agreement with other municipalities and the county and two counties, Beaufort, Jasper Housing Trust dues, and that amount is $89,206. And then there's some other workforce housing costs that have been included in it of a little over almost $411 million, totaling that $4 million. Mm-hmm. So in the adopted budget for 24-25, we don't have ATAX funds set aside for an agency like Community Development Corporation. I'm sorry, I should be saying Coastal Community Development Corporation. I knew I left out one of the C's. In looking at the forecast of our budget year, the coming budget year, and with our goal of not increasing millage rate, where do we look for funds? And so that's why I was looking at, do we have ATAX funds available and what have we allocated? We don't yet know what our plan is going to be for the housing fund for the upcoming fiscal year of 25-26. And so I don't yet know if we're going to have any other funds available within the housing fund to fund this request. But I'm also mindful that while maybe what we wouldn't want to be investing is, as Ms. Tunner pointed out, that amount, that there have been 14 units acquired and given some relief to workforce housing within our community. So I think there's a lot to be said for this type of request. My question is, are there funds available? Because we've already decided which course we want to follow with some of our housing funds. So And as you can tell, I'm a little bit conflicted about it. I wouldn't support the 750,000, but the question is, would I support a lower amount? And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I can't give a clear decision on that at this point because I have some remaining questions about whether or not there are funds available.
Okay. So I'm assuming that the funds question refers to our next fiscal year, our next 2026 year. Okay. I'm not in position to answer that question right now, but it's something that I will make sure I address during our meetings, upcoming meetings that we're having as it relates to budget.
Okay, you done, Ms. Bryson? Okay, where I am with this one, Ms. Burnett, I was part of the discussion when we granted the 600,000. And at that point, we're just on the heels of setting up the ATAX opportunity with the amount that we can use towards housing. To Ms. Bryson's point, at that time, there was some calculations done to offer that we had ATAX dollars available to make some allocations. We chose CCDC as well as Habitat as agencies that will assist in our housing efforts. As we continue to get better at this process, I think there's been a question posed to council about how any agency that is willing to help us with housing gets to the table to have the discussion, okay? So we need to make sure we keep that door open, okay? I want to say that out loud. But as far as the request that's in front of us, I've always viewed the original allocation as sort of a startup, shot in the arm to get them going. And obviously they are going. They've already purchased 14 units and probably more on the way. So at this point, I am not in favor of supporting the request of 750K. And to be more direct, my suggestion would be 0. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I will, before you move.
Do you have a question? May I ask a question?
Sure.
So based on the discussion that we just had about ATAX, is the committee's thinking that maybe we can potentially utilize ATAX for anything in relation to housing going forward? Is that something that you would like to explore? Is that what I heard?
Well, what I want to make sure we are doing, we have already said as a body
Okay.
that a percentage of our ATAX dollars can be used for housing. I mean,
Okay.
that is
Okay.
codified. We need to understand moving forward as we go through this exercise of traditional ATAX, which goes towards tourism-related opportunities. Obviously, the town also has an opportunity to pay itself ATAX dollars to uses that are associated with tourism. So we're going through that exercise of applying some percentages
Yes,
to those
that's
opportunities.
part of the
And I
policy.
want to make sure that as we're having that conversation, we're talking about housing as well, since we have that opportunity. And to Ms. Bryson's point, as we're moving forward, we need to understand, as we're projecting ATAX dollars, what is going to be available, all right? So
Okay.
we're not in the dark as far as what we can use or not use.
I understand.
Okay?
Thank
Yes.
you for the clarification.
Absolutely, okay? All right. Alfred?
Last year, when this proposal came before the Finance Committee and Council, it was a brand-new organization with a brand-new concept and no prior experience here or elsewhere. Now we are in a situation where they've had a year of operation, and as I look at it, they have done what they said they were going to do. Workforce housing is one of our highest priorities in terms of where the town should be spending its dollars and its efforts. I understand that the bang for buck, as Ms. Tunner indicates, is not great. The same was true for Habitat, which we approved last year as well. We are fortunate that we've had some private agencies who have, in fact, put workforce housing on the market and available already. But in terms of what the town has done with its dollars, these 14 units that CCDC put on are the only ones that come out of any town expenditures. And until we get into a position where we can have a bigger result from town dollars, I would be in favor of supporting a grant, not in the amount of $750, but in a smaller amount.
Do you have a small amount in mind, Mr. Alfred?
Yeah, I'm thinking in the $400 to $100,000 range.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Desimone, I know you said that you were going to sit tight, but I want to still offer the opportunity if you had any reaction to anything that's been said. Ms. Becker.
So, thank you again. And with regard to CCDC, I do have a question. 14 units have been mentioned. Do we know that those 14 units were purchased here on Hilton Head Island within our town limits, or are they in other areas?
I believe they're on Hilton Head.
Okay, I would be interested in confirmation of that, as well as confirmation that of all those units that have been purchased, whether they're here on Hilton Head or elsewhere, how many vacancies currently exist. CCDC is outside of the realm of what I would think of as an affiliated agency, and therefore I am not in agreement to do any funding, and it would be a zero from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Burnett. Is anyone from CCDC that can answer Ms. Becker's question directly as far as the amount of? No? Okay, all
Unfortunately,
right.
there's no one.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. Before we give you nods here, I want to give anyone from the public an opportunity to speak on this particular request. Okay. Any final thoughts from members of council?
Mr. Chair, and appreciate the comments of all my colleagues on the town council. And I guess you heard me being a little fuzzy about what I would do. So what I'm going to suggest is that we ask the staff to look to see if there are any funds available for this organization to the tune of something that Mr. Alfred is suggesting, certainly lower than $750,000, lower than $600,000 of last year. I would even say maybe $300,000, but maybe something in the $300,000 to $500,000 range, and put it like as an asterisk down at the bottom, if funds are available to use for housing. That's where I'm thinking at this point.
Okay. So I want to make sure that we are moving along here, so I appreciate where Ms. Bryson is going. So I'm going to ask, as you take your note here, that this particular item be taken back up at the end once we go through all of them, because it may require a separate motion on this particular one, depending on how we come out on the rest of them, okay? So let's just put an asterisk next to it. We'll come back to it at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next agency is the Coastal Discovery Museum. The museum was founded in 1985. The Coastal Discovery Museum has been Hilton Head Island Center of Preservation, Education, and Celebration for the past 35 years. The museum is a 501c3 and doesn't charge admission fee, but voluntary donations are accepted. The ask this year is $141,650, and the allocation is as follows. They would like to use the money for salary expenses to support the salary for a director of finance, 50%, a curator of education, 70%, a museum educator, 70%, for a total of $111,650. In addition to that, they are requesting 50% for a horticulturalist for $30,000. So as I'm looking at the Coastal Discovery Museum financials, I actually went back to 2022 and trying to understand the ask and the changes as it relates to expenses, as it relates to income. And I do have some observations and at the same time, some questions. So looking between 2024 and 2025, I noticed that there's a donation here from Santa Elena Donations that they have not received during the last 3 years. So starting 22, 23, and 24, but now in 25, that amount is as part of their budget for 25 and is as part of their budget for 26. Which I find very interesting because they have not received a donation in the last 3 years. By adding that donation, it increases their total income by $200,000 to an amount of $1.9 million. Compared to the year before of $1.9 million, if we look at that and take that into consideration, we're looking at an increase in income by 13%. However, I'm looking at the personnel and I'm looking at the expenses for personnel. The personnel expenses have increased by, between 23 and 24, they increased by 15%. And if I'm looking between 24 and what they're budgeting for 25, I see an increase of 35%. So personnel expenses are increasing at a rapid rate compared to the revenue that the museum is showing in their financials. Another observation as it relates to property rental income, notice that the last time they reflected property rental income was in 2024. I don't see the amount budgeted in 25, nor I see it in 2026. One thing that I do want to mention and make you aware is, as I'm looking at all the different contributions that the town is doing as it relates to the museum, I'm looking at 2025, and I can go back actually to prior years if that's what you want me to, but I'm looking at 2025. The ask was $107,700 for affiliated agency funding. They also received for 8 tax grant money for $400,000. And they also received CIP funding for $628,500. And also the finance department is also providing what they call bookkeeping services for a cost. I'm looking at all the different people within my team that are doing some kind of work on behalf of the museum. And we're talking about 9 different people. And the cost associated with the 9 people in my team is about $57,000. So if I add the $57,000 to all the different grants and CIP funding that we have provided, we have a total for 2025 of $1.2 million. Compared to 2024, in 2024, the total is $573,000. Compared in 2023, the total is $1.3 million. So I just wanted to make you aware that they receive additional funding other than the affiliated agency funding. Any questions?
Okay, Ms. Stone, the MOU with Coastal Discovery Museum. Okay. Jacob, if you can adjust Ms. Stone's mic for the next time. But there is an MOU in place that speaks to management fee and the maintenance of the grounds that belong to the town is what you're describing.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And do we know offhand if the MOU also covers the accounting portion that Ms. Burnett has brought to our attention?
It does.
It does, okay, all right. But there may be some opportunity here to have further discussion about the MOU and maybe some revisions to it along the way.
Yes, given that there is a position listed in their their positions that would perhaps be able to assume some of that responsibility.
Perfect. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
they do have a finance director, so my assumption is, and a question is, why is this person not doing the functions that the finance team staff are doing right now?
Okay, all right. Ms. Turner. I think I'm going in the right rotation.
Yes, I think you are. Okay, Coastal Discovery Museum, I really see this as a great example of an affiliated agency. This is town-owned land, and the Coastal Discovery Museum runs our museum on behalf of the town. And otherwise, the town would be running it. So I think it meets that, description of affiliated agency. It also has a high number of users. 129,000 people come to the Coastal Discovery Museum. And it's structured in such a way, it may seem like we're spending a lot of money on it, but that's because we have decided as a town that we want it to be free and accessible, and only program charges for special types of programs occur. So that is the business model. I appreciate the transparency regarding all of the other benefits, that organizations are getting. That was something that I felt was lacking in the past, so that there's a lot of transparency about the other benefits, including the management fee, the landscaping support, accounting, et cetera. And I think it's great that we are calling that out and making that transparent. I did have, it is a cultural asset, and I'm very supportive of the Coastal Discovery Museum. I just had a question regarding the horticulturist salary at 50%. In the write-up, it talks about that this individual would work on the integrated pest management strategy and environmentally friendly landscaping. And I know that that is, a focus of our town resources as well. And so, although they're only asking for 50% at $30,000, I just had a question as to, is there any duplication of effort between what the town provides and the horticulturist would provide? But other than that question that I'm just looking for an answer for, I am supportive of the amount asked for. And I don't know if we want to go into the MOU now, or do you want to wait for comments on the MOU?
Well, one of the questions you've asked and a few that Ms. Burnett have brought to our attention, I'm going to ask that Mr. Garnowicz come up and go through those. At that time, we can ask him the questions about the MOU. But wait, Rex, because we may have more that come from Ms. Bryson, okay? I know you're anxious. And the amount that Ms. Turner is referencing for the Coastal Discovery Museum is $141,650, okay? All right, we'll put a pin in your MOU questions as well.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Bryson.
I agree that there's a strong relationship here. We have a longstanding agreement. It's a 10-year agreement. It runs from 2017 to 2027. And it's town-owned property. The Discovery Museum takes care of our property and has focused on rebuilding historic buildings there. And as Ms. Turner mentioned, without charging the public to come there to see this magnificent facility. And I noted, in addition to the number that you mentioned, that since 2007, when they first hosted visitors at Honeyhorn, which is where the whole property is named, they've reached over 1.7 million patrons, including over 1 million tourists. And the town grant has provided support over the past 23 years. And governmental funding provides approximately 30% of their operating budget. They have other sources of income, grants and donations. I did note that with regard to St. Helena, and Mr. Garnowicz can certainly address your question, that they had recently completed a $1.8 million project to renovate the existing hay barn into an exhibition space to tell the story of St. Helena, named in 1526 on Hilton Head Island and in 1566 on Paris Island as the first European capital in North America. And the first chapter of American history is now in the 4th and 8th grade textbooks in South Carolina. So there'll be an increased demand for educators to come to that. So I'm just wondering if maybe there's a difference in the amount from something referred to St. Helena. I see St. Helena in here, it's St. Helena as well, is what I know it. But at any rate, perhaps that Mr. Garnowitz can address that question. In addition to the responsibilities of the horticulturist, I do note that in the application, the Discovery Museum has raised $60,000 of a $100,000 goal to develop a comprehensive master plan to include a botanical garden. And that would be responsibility of that horticulturist position. So I think the relationship also to the town's new pest management policy is because it's certainly an area where we could see the use of organic materials and how they function because of the size of the property. But Mr. Garnowitz can better address that question than I can, but I think that's part of it, is that that's not the only thing this horticulturist would be doing. And I'm supportive of the full request, is my bottom line.
Okay. Mr. Garnowitz, if you could approach, please, sir.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions. So do you have an order you'd like me to answer them in?
Absolutely. We'll start with the St. Helena question as far as the income side of it, please.
Okay, yeah. One of the reasons we've had that sort of pause in Santa Elena donations is because we were constructing the building and then developing the exhibition. We have a projection about a year out of opening that exhibition, and so I have started actively fundraising for that, and we're also working with Marine Recruit Corps Depot Paris Island on artifact loans, and we're bringing artifacts from the actual site to the museum, doing that exhibition, and then developing educational programming for all of the school kids in Beaufort County. And we reach 6,000 to 7,000 kids a year through our programs. A lot of those are kids on Hilton Head Island in both public and private schools. And so that is moving forward, and I think it will create a real historical focus for Coastal Discovery Museum and serving the community as telling that story.
Okay. Next, can we focus around the salary increase, and please give us a bit more particulars about the horticultural opportunity.
The overall salary increase in the museum over years. Yep. We went through a strategic planning process 2 years ago and made the determination that to better care for our property and serve the community, we needed to grow our staff. And so I am in the process of doing that. We have actually added a second museum educator where the request has not been added to our affiliated agencies that we're funding independently because we needed more staff to cover particularly our live animal programming and a lot of that programming that we do for families and school groups. And I have added a deputy director to my staff to free up my time so that I can focus on fundraising for Santa Elena, for other projects. And this is primarily like private fundraising. And so we want to grow the museum, but bring more private money to the table so that we're not increasing our town request. And so you do see our salary go up. With the horticulturalist position in particular, we are working on planning a botanical garden at the museum. And I think one of our biggest assets is the 70-acre Honeyhorn property. A lot of people from the town of Hilton Head Island use that property for leisure activities, everything from running to dog walking, and we really want to enhance that property for the community. I was down in Florida a couple of weeks ago looking at 2 big botanical gardens that are draws for their cities and that people thoroughly enjoy. And that's my vision at Coastal Discovery Museum and Honeyhorn, is that we really activate this outdoor space, and we cannot do that without a horticulturalist. And so I think that's actually a cost savings for us versus hiring an outside firm to come in and do environmentally sensitive landscaping. I want to grow that capacity in-house to have a horticulturalist. And we actually have a part-time person that we hired 3 weeks ago, and she's already made a huge impact on what we can do on that property. And so I think that's a big investment for the town and for the community. We also have the integrated pest management. I think as part of that, what we want to look at are landscaping opportunities that require less herbicides and pesticides that are designed from a horticultural perspective rather than from an application perspective. And I think Honeyhorn's a great property to pilot a program like that, where we're in alignment with what the town's doing, and we're also sort of a test site for some of those activities.
Okay. The bookkeeping and accounting piece.
Yeah, so on the bookkeeping and accounting, our director of finance also does a lot of other like management at the museum. But I would say the original MOU with the town, going back over 20 years, always had the town covering our accounting. And we don't actually have access to the Munis system. And so I think if we had full access to the Munis system, we might be able to relieve some of that work on the town staff. And so I think that's a matter of bringing our personnel together and working out some of those details. And so, I would say our director of finance prepares and submits all of the requests to the town, does all of our hiring and employee paperwork and all of that. And so, I don't know if we could separate from the town and the $57,000 without adding a $57,000 staff position to the museum so that we had a director of finance and a bookkeeper. Because I think that that's essentially what we'd need. And so I think that this is probably a separate meeting between the museum and town staff to really look at our MOU and see where we might be able to modify that to either have cost savings or increase benefits.
Okay. We have our town manager with us today, and you don't have to approach, sir. I just want to make a statement. You're good. I think this is part of the process, okay? This is why important that we have these discussions. We've identified an area that we don't have the best efficiency, okay, as far as our relationship with the Coastal Discovery Museum. So what I'm hearing is that we need to set aside some time for Mr. Garnerix and staff to work together to come up with a solution that makes sense as far as the accounting piece is concerned. Okay, so fair enough on that one. Good.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sorry. While you were talking to the town manager, I wonder at some point if it might be helpful for us to ask the town manager for recommendations about any of these funding applications. And I don't know whether we wait till the end or I hate to make him jump up and down.
We'll have him come at the end. That's fine. Thank you. Okay. All right, so don't leave yet because I know Ms. Turner mentioned that she had some MOU questions that she wanted. Okay.
Yes, and so one of the things they asked us to do is take a look at the MOU, and your MOU just happens to be older than, let's say, the Island Rec. And so when I look at the Island Rec, it's an evolution and I think a stronger MOU. And so I would say at some point we should have a consistent approach for the MOU. So I think there's an opportunity to align your document with where we're going in the future. There is a mention of an annual report. I don't know if you have an annual report or if I missed it, but there's supposed to be an annual report. And I think that those are my only comments.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll look forward to you working with town staff on not only the bookkeeping piece of the MOU, but a little bit more consistent with the current expectations of the
Absolutely.
town.
I think that MOU has sort of been recycled
Sure.
since 2007
Right.
and not significantly changed.
Yes.
And I think that both the museum and the town have grown, and we could probably address that out of cycle and look to renew that MOU and update it in the coming year.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make it clear that that even though I had a question about the horticulturist, I am supportive of the entire grant amount.
Perfect, okay. All right, so before we move on, I will again offer the opportunity to our colleagues. Ms. Becca, anything on this one that you want to bring to us? Fully support, thank you. Mr. Alfred? Can you come up, sir, since you got more than just a, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to put microphones over there, Mr. Orlando.
Or they can sit up front,
Yeah, right.
have a shorter walk.
Okay, any public comment on this particular application? Seeing none, Ms. Burnett, you have what we need here. All right, moving along.
The next agency is the Hilton Head Island Recreation Association. The association, the rec center was created established in 1977, is dedicated to providing and managing recreational services, community events, and the Island Youth Center, a project developed by the Hilton Head Island Rotary Club. The association oversees the scheduling of the Island Recreation and Senior Center, along with town-owned parks. The ask is $1,252,366, and the allocation is for recreational services, aquatic, senior citizen activities, athletic programs, fitness programs, youth and teen programs. Again, as I'm looking at the financials, and the financials and the information that we have does not give me clear visibility of the different programs and the different expenses. So it's very high level. So as I'm looking at the revenues, one of the things that I just want to mention, the other income and the community events has increased by 12%. I'm looking at the expenses. I'm looking at payroll expense, specifically for maintenance staff, youth, adult athletic staff, and youth program staff has increased by 3%. As I'm looking at the payroll taxes and insurance and other benefits, I see an increase of 7% this is between 25 and 26. I'm looking at senior citizen program, senior trips, I see an increase of 26%. And as I'm looking at youth teen programs, specifically for Discovery Club, Summer Day Camp, I see an increase of 16%. The total facilities between, again, 26 and 25, and again, these are budgeted numbers, something that I forgot to mention. It is an increase of 2%. And as I'm looking at the whole general administrative expense, I see a 4% increase. I'm not able to actually verify actuals and past trends with financials at this point. Again, the numbers reflected are budgeted revenues and expenses provided for fiscal year 25 and 26. There is a presentation, it looks like a PowerPoint presentation, kind of like a picture, and I see that there's 20, 21, and 22 years reflected, and I see in this graph an increase in revenues and expenses in 2022. Unfortunately, that's all the financial information that I have at this point.
Okay. And
I do have to mention, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown. The Rec Center is another agency that receives funding from other sources. So let me make sure. So if I'm looking at 2025, I'm looking for the affiliated agency grant is $1,167,366. For ATAX is $75,000. For the CIP budget is $520,000. And like the Coastal Discovery Center, this agency also receives bookkeeping services from the finance department at a total cost of $46,000. So the total amount for 2025 is $1.8 million.
okay, and the request before us is 1.252366, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'm looking at, again, the year before for the rec center is $1,167,366.
Okay. And Ms. Stone, MOU, yes?
Yes.
We do have an MOU, yes, and it includes the accounting services that Ms. Burnett spoke about.
Okay. So take into account the total amount that we are allocating to our wonderful partner in the Island Recreation Center, and your concern about bookkeeping. To me, this one also qualifies for further discussion as far as the MOU is concerned. I know we just visited that MOU a short time ago, but with anything else, we continue to evolve. We want to continue to get better, so I think this is appropriate for us to have a discussion with our partners over at the Rec Center on this as well, okay? All right, with that, we will go to Ms. Bryson first on this one.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think I'll just try to start out with bottom line. Bottom line is I'm supportive of the request. This is clearly an example of an affiliated agency. The town owns wonderful recreational areas, parks, buildings, et cetera. Island Recreation does the programming for us, helps us with the, looking after those properties. We do not have a Parks and Recreation department, but typically a town would have a Parks and Recreation department to look after its park facilities and to do its programming. So this is, in my view, an essential public service of a town. And so I do see it being affiliated. And in addition to that, it's a great service to the community in so many different ways, from the senior center to children's activities to adults like me activities. So it's a great service to the community and an essential function of municipal government. And I did wonder about what's the increase for, and I looked from their application, which says the funding request is a 5.5% increase. So based on my really rough calculations, it's about an $85,000 increase in the affiliated agency funding. And it does say that their overall fiscal year 26 budget has a 3.5% increase, so it's offset by some other income. At any rate, bottom line is I'm supportive. It's an essential function. It's an affiliated agency.
Okay. Ms. Turner.
I ditto what Ms. Bryson said, so I won't repeat it, but I love this business model. And one of the reasons that I do is they have a goal to support 50% of their operations through their own funding, which I think is a wonderful way to go. And then I'm also impressed that the Carmine Foundation provides scholarships for families in need, and that provides a lot of opportunity for people that might not be able to participate. I thank them for all the data that they provided, for their results and the impacts that their programs have. It was a well put together application, and it has a high number of users, 651,000 participant visits. I mean, that's incredible. So I'm very supportive of the $1.2 million ask.
Ms. Turner. Okay. Ms. Becker, anything?
So I agree with the comments that have been made, and I do want to say that in my mind, the Island Rec is a very sound and good example of what an affiliated agency should be with the town. And so I'm fully supportive. I do want to just mention, whether it's appropriate here or not, I'm going to say it because I've been saying it quite a bit, but I'm not getting traction. We need a better senior citizen department coming out of Island Rec. More space, more activities, and the rest. But having said that, I'm fully supported, and this is a prime example of a best youth affiliated agency agreement we have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Alfred. Okay. Thumbs up. Thank you, sir. Any public comment on this particular item? Applicant, any words? You good? Okay, all right.
As a judge once told me, ma'am, you're winning your argument, don't say anything else.
Okay, Ms. Burnett, you have what you need there. We will Move on.
The next agency is the Low Country Regional Transportation Authority, or LRTA, known as Palmetto Breeze, is one of the 10 public transportation systems established under South Carolina law and serves as the primary public transportation provider for Beaufort, Colleton, Hampton, Jasper, Allendale counties. Since its founding in 1978, the LRTA has been a key rural transportation provider, offering critical transit services to the region. Palmetto Breeze services include 24 fixed route commuter lines, 12 urban and 12 rural, demand response services in Beaufort County, and coordinated trips to essential destinations such as the regional healthcare providers. The ask for this upcoming year is $507,051, and the distribution is as follows. Local contribution match assist for daily rural commuter program for $55,000. Breeze trolley season extension for $20,000. Breeze trolley passenger fares, so service can remain free, $35,000. Local match assist for securing 5307 Federal Transit Administration grant, a small urbanized area operations for $397,051. Again, the total is $507,051. As I'm looking at their financials, I did notice that their budget for the new year has increased from 1.2 to $2.8 million in budget. It seems like the operation is increasing. I did notice that the funding that they used to get from the federal and state has decreased. The federal grant is now lower by $1.2 million. And the state grants has decreased too by almost $300,000. So this particular agency has increased their ask for the prior year. The prior year was $253,595. And my assumption is due to the losing grant, might be one of the areas why they're looking to increase the funding in addition to their operations that has increased. That's all I have for them.
Okay. And this organization, Ms. Stone?
They had an MOU in place for the summer season to provide trolley services from USCB to Coligny. That has expired, and there's not an MOU to cover the broader services.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ms. Turner.
All right. So, when I think about this organization, they provide a couple of services to us. The first one is the broader transit strategy of bringing workers onto the island. And so those workers are coming from, many miles away to come and work on Hilton Head Island. And it is a factor because there may not be affordable housing that is available on the island, and so they live further out and need that public transportation in order to support the employers. So that's an important component that we need to make sure continues in the future. What I did not understand is what the usage is associated with that piece of the equation. The second area that they provide support is on the trolley on the island. So again, this is a decision that has been made that this is a free service that is provided for transportation around the island for tourists as well as residents, and some employees also use that as well. The request is a significant increase over the prior year. And when I look at the financial position historically and moving forward, I feel for your organization. These are interesting times. It's an important service, and you're not getting the funding and support from the entities that you've had in the past. And I really worry about your financial future because of that. And so I question what can be done to further support you. It was interesting when I was doing some research on that there was a comment made that the sales tax referendum was going to provide a portion of that money to support you. I'll be honest, I was not aware of that. I think that could have been perhaps more broadly communicated, because that would have been a nice way for this organization to receive funding. There's also been a request to add additional services onto Hilton Head for $20,000, and that's to have the trolley during the holiday season as well. So I understand the importance of this. Like I said, I'm concerned about the change that you're receiving in funding, and so now you're coming to the town to ask for some additional support. And so I'm just worried about the total amount of money of your request, which was $507,000, and how we can accommodate that or not accommodate all of that, within our budget. I'm supportive of your system, and it's just a matter of how much money in regards to the funding that we're going to be able to afford to give you, as well as my concern about future funding from other organizations and what we can do to help you with that.
Okay, I'm going to invite the applicant up after I get any questions that Ms. Bryson may have. I'm trying to keep note of what the concerns are. So, okay, Ms. Bryson.
Yes, I echo a lot of the comments of Ms. Tunner. And I look at, is this a typical function of a local government, especially a municipal government, a town or a city? In my experience is yes, most cities and towns don't have their own bus service, so to speak, their own mass transit system. Some do, usually the very large cities, but most of them contract out with a private entity to provide that service. And a large part of those, the funding of those services comes from federal funding. As Ms. Hunter says, in uncertain times and already some reduction in funding, I'm looking at the basis of the request, and it says consists of $55,000 toward local match for daily rural commuter program, $20,000 toward extending the Breeze trolley season, that's the holiday season you were speaking of, $35,000 to cover the cost of Breeze trolley passenger trips to be paid by the town so the service can remain fare-free. That's our local trolley service. And $397,051 to cover the local match needed to secure 5307 FTA grant. That's a federal grant earmarked for small urbanized area operations. I do think that they need an increase in funding. And my question is, with only so many available funds, we don't yet know the exact total. We know that there's an increase in requests over prior years. But what if we take out the $20,000 for the holiday season and look at the rest of it for full funding? Is my question for other committee members, subject to whatever the chair comments about and the questions being addressed.
Okay. Obviously, this is an important function of our community. In my mind, a lot bigger than the discussion we're having today. To Ms. Tunner's point, obviously there's demand in our region around this topic that we've got to get our heads and arms wrapped around. So it's a bigger discussion with our counterparts at the county, is how we expand in this area, okay? So I am in support of us coming up with a number that makes sense for us locally to keep the system in operation. So at this point, I'm going to ask that the applicant come up, and as you come, I've got a list of questions here, but as you give your answers, I want you to really be thinking about your request of $507,051, and the staff is making a recommendation to us, taking into account what they've reviewed and also our capabilities as a municipality as far as our financial restraints, okay? And that number is coming out to be $260K, okay? So with that sort of lens to look through, can we start with the question that Ms. Turner had about commuter statistics, as folks come on to the island?
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Brian Sullivan. I'm the Executive Director of LRTA. I took over in November. We had a 10-year term. She retired in November, and I was blessed by the board to be selected to take over the progress that she had made, which included the inception of the trolley here on the island, as well as a lot of very valuable commuter services. The daily commuter program runs 362 days a year. It averages about 200, 210 passengers per day. So that's basically 400 passenger trips per day in and out that directly affect the island economy. And so the portion of our request that applies to that service is really it's just the 55,000. That had historically been just 50. We felt it was necessary to increase that number since our rural communities, the 5 counties that fund the majority of that service, are carrying the brunt of that. We thought it was time to increase it, so we made an increase in 10% for that line item. So obviously that number goes up during the high season. In fact, starting today, one of our routes was adjusted to accommodate the Marriott Vacation Resorts. So we have a lot of H-2B passengers that are starting today through October. So pretty vital service. And as the funding formulas work, it's, like I said, the costs are carried mostly by the 5 counties.
Okay. Ms. Turner, any follow-up to that particular question?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, yep.
Sorry,
Yes,
Mr. Chair. Yeah, that does create another question in my mind. As I understand it, the 5 counties are funding, and I think I heard you say that the town is being asked to increase a little bit more its funding as compared to spreading it out, say a 10% increase across the board. So you're asking us for a little bit more increase than the other areas because of our demand, is that?
Actually, their increase is much higher.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So our overall budget, just like the request here, is much higher. The request we're making for the local match for the rural service to the 5 counties is significantly higher.
Okay.
And we thought it'd be important, I thought it was good publicity for the town too, if it is accepted and granted, that they can say, or we can say the town is giving more to support that service.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I misunderstood you.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. As far as future financial sustainability,
Right.
was another question. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. There's a couple things that's complicated. So the drop in federal funding, federal grant monies, what happens is we get annual grants through the Federal Transit Administration, and those grants can sit there sometimes as long as 6-7 years, depending on the grant, depending on what the usages are. Sometimes they get delayed. For example, during COVID, a lot of grants were basically put on hold. And then we were using CARES Act money and ARRA or ARPA money in lieu of that. And so we had a lot of grants that were sitting there not being used in the past 3 years. Our new finance director, Christine Hepburn, she's with me here today, she cleaned that all up. We wanted to use those old grants. And so the drop off you're seeing there is really because we've cleaned those up. We don't have those grants available anymore. Another complicating factor is that we won't know our federal grants to match the town's fiscal year until next September, October. So we're always kind of in arrears with that. The good news for this area is that the population's growing. So the appropriations from the Federal Transit Administration for our urban area, those are based entirely on population. So at the cost of areas that are losing population, we are theoretically gaining appropriations through the federal government. We don't suspect that big of a drop off in our appropriations. If anything, we expect some growth, even with the new administration in Washington. There is concern in the industry that the federal administration is going to focus on what they consider to be federal issues, and that there's discussion at the DOT that public transportation is considered a local issue. So we are keeping a very close eye on that, and we're doing that across the country. To Ms. Tunner's point, the issue we have with local match is the lack of a dedicated funding source. And the referendum in November definitely would have addressed that issue for us. We had worked very closely with Beaufort County They had kind of increased our presence in the description of that. But as a direct recipient of that, just like the county or the town, we were not lawfully allowed to promote it. We could educate to the extent that we could educate, but we couldn't promote it. So we feel the pain because it would have definitely addressed that issue. This request would be significantly lower, as would the request to our other, we have a total of 9 local match providers now. So we're going to see this until there is a dedicated funding source, most likely through some sort of sales tax referendum, hopefully Beaufort County in 2026.
Question. So do most municipalities have some type of structure, funding structure like that to help support and provide monies on a regular basis?
Yes, that's the short answer is yes. Even in the state of South Carolina, if we're not the biggest in terms of operating statistics, we're one of the biggest without one. So obviously Horry County, Myrtle Beach, with the Coast RTA, Comet in Columbia, they have dedicated funding sources, and I think in every case it's a tax, it's a sales tax.
So to follow up on that question, our neighbors in Bluffton, as I understand it, have expanded their local service of the Breeze. Have they identified a funding source that they have now committed to that?
Their process is much like yours. We met with, the difference there is we met with staff first several weeks ago to review the request, which is significantly higher than last year. So they had the exact same questions you have. In fact, very similar about the funding mechanisms and how, basically how transit is funded across the country, and then specifically how it is or isn't funded here in the Low Country. So to answer your question, no, again, it's coming out of general fund. It's, you know, in the past, folks have mentioned, should we be an allowable A-tax distribution, and I believe that was the resolution of that was no, that public transit cannot be.
Got it. Okay. The last question I had on my list was the increase in services for the holidays. I think there's a $20,000 number attached to that. I guess we sort of need to understand that before we push a number to Ms. Burnett.
Yeah. So unlike the rest of our operation for fiscal 26, I wanted to show some growth. The trolley is very near and dear to me personally. The holidays are near and dear to me personally, as they are, I think, across this island. And we realized during December that we feel like we're missing sort of an opportunity to serve primarily residents and their families, because I think we serve primarily visitors and their families in the summer. Plus the investment that the local communities, businesses, developments invest in decorating their properties for the holidays. And I feel like people don't see them. If you're driving yourself, you really aren't seeing them and enjoying them. The fire department, all the places that are just the highlights. And they happen to be, the vast majority of them happen to be along our routes. And so in the spirit of trying to show some modest growth in what we provide to the town of Hilton Head Island, we came up with that number. Basically, it's about a 50% match on the operating costs it would cost for the trolley to operate for 4 weeks in December.
Okay, I know Ms. Stone mentioned that we don't currently have an MOU. What we had was expired. And there are times that we see increases in our visitation on Hilton Head. Prime example would be Memorial Day in the Pope Avenue area.
Right.
And you all have provided additional services during those times. Is that a side cost that comes to the town, or is that included in this amount?
It is an additional cost. There is an agreement that is almost finalized, basically to replace the expired one from last year. We do a new agreement every year, basically because it enumerates exact dates from Memorial Day weekend all the way through Labor Day. And so pending approval by the town, the staff, that rate did go up a little bit because of our operating costs going up a little bit, but it's still operated at a great discount when compared to if you had sought a private contractor to operate that shuttle. Okay. So that service would start the Friday of Memorial Day and run every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and every holiday through Labor Day.
Okay, so that number is not included in what
Correct.
We've talked about, and there is a number that we have used in the past, as we move forward with those agreements, that obviously that's something operational that the town manager is dealing with. So I get that. But I think it's very, important to this discussion as we're looking to make sure that we don't lose, coverage in our area. It also seems, you use the word complicated, to help with that complication, it seems as if you are more knowledgeable with your financial grants and opportunities out of cycle. For us, with affiliated agencies, I think you mentioned September is when you'll have better numbers, okay? So, the top of my mind, what I'm thinking is, as we come together with MOUs, I think understanding the timing of our discussion with Pamela Breeze is important. I don't think that it's appropriate the way we're currently doing it. We just don't have good information to make good decisions, right? So just planting that seed with staff as well as we move this along. Okay. All right. Yes, Ms.
One more
Bryson.
question about the holiday season. I think it's a great idea, and I certainly support reducing, encouraging mass transit opportunities for travel and taking a lot of cars off the road if we can. So I certainly am supportive of that. But did you tell us that 20,000 is a matching number with operations? So
Basically, we applied the same formula that we try to apply all the time, which is a 50-50 match for operating money. That's how the Federal Transit Administration grants are structured. So basically, for every dollar contributed by the local match partner, there's an additional dollar paid through the Federal Transit Administration. So we would portion off basically an additional $20,000, maybe a little bit extra, just in case, of our federal grant money to provide that service in December.
So if we reduce the request by 20,000, it would also reduce the matching funds from the federal government. So
Correct.
okay, so it'd be more than a $20,000 reduction in the money coming in and going out for you.
Correct.
Okay. Brandon, don't go anywhere. So I want to make sure that my colleagues don't have additional questions. Ms. Becker, you're good? Okay. Mr. Alfred, you good? Okay. All right, Ms. Burnett. So we've got a request in front of us of slightly over 500K and a recommendation from staff for 260K. It's their pleasure of the committee to give Ms. Burnett a number here.
I'm leaning towards the request minus 20,000, the holiday time. Their request.
That would put us at,
About 487 or
487.
51, yeah.
yes. Your feelings on that, Ms. Turner?
Although I'm supportive, it's a big increase, and I'm concerned about that, and I'm looking for some guidance, perhaps, from what we're trying to balance to come up with a number. I don't have a number in my head right now, but looking at the whole portfolio and how it fits in.
And so, Ms. Burnett, can you help us? I know you've made a recommendation of 260K, so can you give us some understanding as to how we got to that number, please?
Yes, the 260 that you see there is actually reflected in prior year's funding, so we're just increasing the number. So last year was 253,595. So we're just increasing the amount to 260. So there was no science behind it, just looking at last year's number and just rounding up the number.
Got it. And we also, again, have to take into consideration that Mr. Sullivan is not necessarily privy at this point to understand where he is financially because of the September dates. Okay. So Ms. Bryson is suggesting 487. Ms. Turner is not comfortable with going that high. Is there anything in the middle that we can put on the table to talk about?
I'm always about trying to work out a compromise. I'm looking at prior years in fiscal year 2023, it was 282,404, and in fiscal year 2024, 277,842. So if you take the highest of the numbers, it's closer to 300,000. So if we're looking at 480 minus 300,000, split the difference. So 350,000, no, a little bit higher than that, 390?
390,
Thank you.
to your calculation. Mhm.
For discussion purposes, I'm gonna put 350 out there to see how Ms. Turner reacts to it.
350 sounds good, and then if we can, at the end, total it all up and kind of see where we are.
Okay, so can we move forward with 350 for the moment on this one? And again, my colleagues in the room, any questions about moving forward with 350? Yes, good, thank you. Okay, Ms. Burnett, let's carry on, please.
Okay, the next one is Mitchellville, the Preservation Project. The historic Mitchellville Freedom Park is dedicated to preserving, promoting, and honoring historic Mitchellville, the first self-governed town of formerly enslaved people in the United States. HMFP shares the powerful story of Mitchellville's residents and their pursuit of education, self-sufficiency, and full participation in a free society. Through engaging exhibits, signature events, guided tours, and educational programs such as lectures, forums, and cultural experiences, HMFP provides immersive learning opportunities to the public. The requested amount is $105,000, and the funding utilization, according to the application, is site maintenance, staff support, operations, and utilities, for a total of $105,000. Looking at the other sources of funding as it relates to the Mitchellville Preservation Project, if we're looking at 2025, the affiliated agency funding was $105,000. Looking at ATAX funding, it was $190,000. And looking at 2025 CIP budget, the amount was $1,054,702, for a total amount of $1,349,702. Looking at the financials, the only thing that caught my eyes was the total expenditures compared to the prior year. And by prior year, I'm talking about the year ending is December. So I'm comparing the end of December 2023 against December 2024. The only thing that I see that is a big increase is the total expenditures. So it went from $1.4 million to $1.9 million. That's almost an increase of $500,000. So I'm looking at their financials. The only thing that I see is an increase in programming that generated the increase in the expenditures. That's the only thing that I see that is, for me, from a financial perspective, is a red flag. And other than that, no more comments on financials.
Okay. Ms. Stone?
We do have an MOU with Mitchellville, and it specifically lists the executive director, and I think we can probably revise that MOU maybe to broaden what the funding is for.
Okay, and as far as the, Ms. Burnett mentioned the capital improvement, that is town-owned property.
That's correct.
So we want to make sure that we continue the investment there. The MOU does not speak to that a large degree, does it?
There's also a lease in place
Yes.
with Mitchellville that
Yes.
covers some other
Perfect.
aspects.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me make sure I get my amount right here that we are asking for. It's not the 1.3 that you just mentioned. It is 105,000. Okay, all right, I think Ms. Bryson is up.
Bottom line, I think they're affiliated, an essential service, wonderful opportunity for our community to respect the historic nature of this beautiful park. It's a flat 105,000 since 2022, supportive of full funding request, affiliated agency.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Turner?
Right, ditto. And, it's a cultural asset. It's land that's owned by the town. And so it's a good example of an affiliated agency. And I want to compliment them on their capital drive. They've been very active and successful and are continuing to do that. And so that's a wonderful way to manage that process. And again, this is another example where the decision is that it's free access to a historical site that really has untapped future potential. So I am very supportive of the $105,000 grant.
Okay, I am as well. We continue to improve our offering down at Mitchellville. The town is a true partner along with this effort. So at this point, I offer that the executive director at least come up and answer Ms. Burnett's question about the expenditure increase, please, sir.
Good afternoon. Ahmad Ward, Executive Director for Historic Mitchellville Freedom Park, for the record. We did advance some of our offerings last year, and we also have several construction projects happening at once. So I think what you're seeing in those expenditures is us expending money to build things in the park. So most notably, last June, we opened ghosted structures in the park that are aligned with the historic homes that would have been in the 1860s, 70s, and 80s. Obviously, that was a large-scale project. It's a $1.2 million project that we received funding from the state of South Carolina to do. And all of the things that go around that is really the main reason we had that big, large increase in expenditures from the previous year. And of course, there'll be more because we're working on a archaeological research facility that we hope to open next year, sometime second quarter or right before the summer. That'll be a 4,000 square foot building that will allow us to actually have people in place on the site and do programs on the site instead of us renting other places. So this will be a boon to the organization specifically to have that building there. So that we'll see another variance in some of those expenditures. Fortunately for that, we did receive $2.5 million from the Mellon Foundation to cover that expense. And so we have that funded already. While I have the floor, I would like to talk about the MOU situation. The MOU should be designed for what we have in the utilization, site maintenance, staff support, operations, and utilities. About 2 years ago, I had approached this committee about trying to change how it is coded under executive director, because that was never our intention. But for those who've been around long enough, when I first got here, the town was paying the salary. And so some kind of way in the translation of making this an affiliated agency, that language over into that. And so that's why it's coded that way. But our utilization is what the funds are going to go for.
Thank you, sir. We look forward to working on those revisions of the MOU.
Absolutely.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alford, Thank you, sir. Okay.
The next applicant is Sandalwood Community Food Pantry. This organization was established in 2009. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving low-income families whose earnings fall below the poverty line as defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Sandalwood provides essential food, hygiene supplies, and clothing to clients who rely on these resources for their daily needs. The pantry primarily serves three key populations: the Gala, Hispanic, and immigrant communities, many of whom work in Hilton Head Island's hospitality industry. One thing that I failed to mention at the beginning, this is the first time that this organization applies for affiliated agency funding. The amount that they're requesting is $97,500, and the funding utilization is Resilient Food Pantry Phase 6 cost and parking lot, $97,500, again, is the total amount. This is the first time that I see their financials. When I'm looking at their financials, nothing comes up. I don't know if these numbers are comparable to other food pantry organizations that we have on the island. So I cannot provide you additional guidance as it relates to this.
Okay. Ms. Stone, any MOUs with the food pantry?
Not for food pantry service, no. There's a lease that you voted on recently, but that's the only.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Turner.
Right, Sandalwood. I'm very supportive of Sandalwood and their mission. It is, it's something that my local community that I live in, Palmetto Hall, is very much associated with and supports through fundraising and other types of activities, including volunteering. Ms. Stone mentioned the lease. We had our first reading and we did pass the lease for the ability for this organization to build a resilient pantry at a different location, and I'm very supportive of that. In regards to this specific request of $97,500, it is for costs associated with building out the parking lot. And in the agreement for the lease, there was specific language that we would not pay for any further improvements to the property. Based on that, I am not supportive of this specific request, but supportive of Sandalwood as an organization and the lease.
Thank you. Ms. Bryson.
I agree with Ms. Turner. It's wonderful community service, what a value Sandalwood has provided to those in food needs in our community, and I encourage them to go on, which is why I also am supportive of the lease. In thinking about whether or not they're affiliated, and due to the lease terms, I think we have second reading this afternoon, which I'm going to support as well. I'm not inclined to go ahead and approve additional funding. It's a little bit of a stretch for me to say affiliated, although we are leasing the property to them, but I think it's for a community service. And I'd look for them to, for their fundraising activities for the construction. So I would also agree no funding.
This is a great organization. Obviously, we feel so as a council, to the point that my colleagues have made about us authorizing a long-term lease with the pantry for grounds and facility. I think that shows a commitment to the organization and their cause. But I too am not in a position to support the request, and no funding would be my suggestion as well. And Mr. Alfred, concur? Any public comment on this particular item? Okay, Ms. Burnett, we're good.
The next organization is the Sea Turtle Patrol. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting sea turtles on Hilton Head Island. The organization financially supports and conducts sea turtle nest monitoring, hatching activity observation, and stranding response along 20 miles of Hilton Head Island beaches. Through public education and outreach, they raise awareness about the importance of sea turtle conservation, a critical effort to ensure the survival of this endangered species. The ask, before I go to the ask, I do want to make the committee aware, the Sea Turtle Patrol, they do get other sources of funding. Last year in 2025, the affiliated agency granted $73,480. ATAX money, $70,000 for a total of $143,480 for fiscal year 2025. The ask for this, for the upcoming year, for fiscal year 2026, is $97,500. And the allocation is as follows: Executive Director salary, 70%, $35,000. Part-time Administrative Consultant stipend, 70%, $12,000. Annual storage unit fee, $5,500. Annual lease fees, working facility, $45,000. The total amount again is $97,500. As I'm looking at the financials, I'm looking at fiscal year 23 and 24, both expenses and revenues are in line. There's a small increase, but I don't see anything that will create some concerns on my part, both expenditures is about 176,000 for '23, and the 2024 expenditures are about $185,000. So that is a small increase, so I have no concerns on the financials.
Okay, so the amount before us is 97,500. And Ms. Stone, this organization, as far as MOU is concerned?
There's no MOU for Sea Turtle Patrol. We do have a separate MOU with Amber Kewen for some work that she does unrelated to this grant.
Those are operational funds that are allocated by the town manager to perform items outside of what we're discussing today.
That's
Is that
correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, while we're on the MOU, just want to make this comment. You know, obviously, this organization continues to be an asset for us, in addition to what we're paying them operationally, okay? And to stay in line with us having more of a consistent process, I would encourage that we have the discussion with the organization around putting together some type of memorandum of understanding for the future, okay? All right. Bryson.
First of all, I'm highly supportive of the Sea Turtle Patrol and got a wonderful group of volunteers. And I think they do provide an essential service on town property related to our parks, because indeed, who does own the beach? And certainly an essential service with us during beach renourishment, and also helping to patrol our beaches and to protect the sea turtles. If we didn't have them, we'd have to have an increase in our staff, I think, to be able to provide this essential governmental service. It's an unusual governmental service, but you can compare it to other kinds of special environmental needs that other local governments might have. And so I do see an affiliation here, and I support full funding of $97,500.
Thank you. Ms. Turner.
Yes. We need to support this organization because having world-class beaches includes protecting our nesting sea turtles. And they do more than that as well in providing education to visitors and residents alike. The town and chamber continues to market and focus on this work, which creates more awareness and demand for programming. And the focus on the environment is one of our key values. So I fully support the grant of $97,500.
Okay. Alfred, anything to add? No, sir? Thank you. Okay, I think we're good. The applicant has anything to add? Yes.
Kathy Sanders, Treasurer of Sea Turtle Patrol. I'm just filling in for Amber today because unfortunately she wasn't able to come, but she will be here this afternoon. We just want to thank you for your consideration and everything you've done to help us grow and your support. We are a small organization that's fast growing, and your knowledge and guidance along that way is greatly appreciated.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Burnett.
The last agency for this morning is the Children's Center. This is the first time that this organization applies for affiliated agency funding. The Children's Center is a 501c3. It is a nonprofit organization committed to providing affordable, high-quality early childhood education and childcare services for working families, including a multicultural bilingual program. Since its founding in 1967, the Children's Center has remained steadfast in its mission to ensure that all children, regardless of financial background, have access to a strong educational foundation. What started as a small program serving 15 children has expanded to support about 110 children daily, with many more families on a growing waiting list. The ask for this application is $80,000. And they're planning to utilize the funding for operational support to help keep childcare affordable. Again, the amount is $80,000. I did notice, looking at their financials, and I have financials for years 2022 and years 2023, The 22 revenue numbers are higher than the 23 numbers by about $300,000. Expenditures have increased, so revenues have decreased and revenues have decreased. Revenues have decreased and expenditures have increased by about $200,000. Again, I don't have anywhere else to compare if this is an organization that is managing their financials properly. I do notice that their expenditures are higher than their revenues. That's it.
Thank you. And no MOU with
No,
these?
sir.
Okay, thank you. And the current request is $80,000.
That is correct, 80,000.
Okay, Ms. Bryson?
One quick question, who owns the land where the Children's Center is located?
The Children's Center does. There was an exchange of property between the town and the Children's Center in 2008, 9. The town received property over where the second traffic circle on Matthews Drive, meaning Matthews, Marshland, exists now, and a site for which is where they used to be, and the site for the current location was traded to the Children's Center for that to facilitate, number one, they needed to rebuild and facilitate the road improvements that were made by the town following that.
Okay, great, thank you. I know they're located, not near Jarvis Park, but close to Jarvis Park. And I thought I'd heard in the past they'd been on some sort of town property. So thank you for that clarification. So first of all, in looking at the affiliated agency question, I have to disclose my bias. My mom had a daycare center for probably 40 years. In fact, in Gaston County in North Carolina, at one time she had 4 centers. Did I ever work for her? Yes. So did my sister and my brother-in-law and my brother and my father. So I'm very, very supportive of childcare. Early childhood is so essential to the well-being of our children. But the question is this a local government, particularly a town or city function? Generally, it is not. The funding often comes from sources like United Ways for the not-for-profit agencies, and from certainly the fees that parents pay for childcare. In some cases, there might be some county funding if it's a part of a social services organization. So with it not being on town property and not a responsibility for maintaining town property, and generally, if related to a governmental function, it's more likely a county function rather than a town function. While I'm supportive of this wonderful opportunity for children in our community, I don't see it as being the type of affiliated agency that the others we have discussed would be. And so reluctantly, I'm not supportive of this funding.
Yeah, yes, in regards to the Children's Center, I applaud what they do. It's very important work. My son has benefited from programs such as this. He was not able to afford to pay full-time childcare for his children so that he could go to work. And so he was able to take advantage of programs in Illinois that provided reduced rates, gave his children a safe place to go, and also receive some education along the way. So very supportive of the vision. But I support Ms. Bryson's comments that I don't see this as an affiliated agency. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to also admit, my bias is here. Mr. Coltrane just jerked my memory. You are looking at a product of the Children's Center. I attended when it was in that old spot off of Matthews Drive. 4-way stop sign, a lot of accidents coming right through that 4-way stop sign in the parking lot of the Children's Center. Lucky to be here. I too understand the importance of childcare within our community. It touches so many areas, but unfortunately, it is a huge undertaking, and not one that the the town is prepared to participate in. So I too will not be supporting the request. Alfred? Okay, any public? Yes.
I don't think Mr. Alfred went to the Children's Center, is that correct? We'll just put a pin in that comment.
Yeah, right. Any public comment on this one? None? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Could you please approach? The applicant is here to approach. Welcome. I apologize.
No apologies necessary, but thank you. My name's Jody Levette. I'm the director at the Children's Center currently. As was stated, this was our first opportunity to learn about this affiliated agency. Sitting here today, I've learned so much and really am humbled by the work that you do. I would just suggest that the work of the Children's Center is not just to ensure that our children are prepared for the future, but it truly is an economic development issue for our town. Because without childcare available, people will not be working here on Hilton Head Island. So study after study has shown that it really works at both ends. It works for the parents being able to be employed currently, as well as preparing our children for the future. I will also say that the Children's Center is one of only 2 local facilities that offer infant and toddler care. And so the wait lists are incredibly long for those families. I had a mother in my office just this morning before I came over who said, I really thought I was going to have to quit my job because I had no place to take my baby. So I would offer up that there is a value to the town to be able to provide that economic base for our community in supporting of childcare, especially affordable childcare, because we cannot put the cost of tuition, the actual cost of childcare, on our parents and expect them to be able to remain employed and or not partake in public programs that are necessary. So I would just share that and thank you all for your time to look at this opportunity today.
Okay, don't leave. Don't leave. Because we got great minds up here, so there may be some reaction to some of what you said.
Sure.
I, for one, have, okay. I want to make sure that we keep the lines of communication open with your organization. We just finished our strategic planning session. Economic development was something that came out as a priority for us. That obviously threads through a lot of different areas. And to your point, childcare is important. Just sort of thinking through if we're trying to attract certain businesses here on Hilton Head, maybe those that are willing to assist with childcare for their employees are those that bubble up to the top for us, okay? So there's creative ways for us to engage with one another. I would encourage that you continue to have conversations, particularly around not just economic development, but our Finding Home framework that we're working to have housing more affordable. And this, obviously, I've said many times that we can argue day and night about AMIs and that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, somewhere around 30% of someone's income is what should go towards housing. That way there's an appropriate amount left for childcare and other services, okay? So we definitely need to keep the lines of communication open as we move forward. I will pause there. Anything from?
Another thought along those lines, the economic development. We have a number of employers on the island, and I know Novant is looking at some workforce housing and including, I think, some opportunities for childcare. So perhaps there might be a cooperative program there. And also working with Mr. O'Toole, who was here earlier with Beaufort County Economic Development, in trying to attract economic development to perhaps include an extra star if that new economic opportunity provides some assistance for childcare or some sort of cooperative childcare facility. So I think there are a couple of other opportunities there. And I think it would be good to stay in touch with the town to see if there's any other way we can assist, because believe me, I know. I ran my mom's main daycare center for about 6 months, and also did her summer program for school-age kids one summer. I thought I was crazy, but anyhow. So I very, very much support childcare, know of the need. I totally understand. I used to do the payroll. Totally understand the economic challenges of, and you've got to have good folks there too. You've got to have good folks to look after the children, and they need a decent wage as well. So, gosh, I wish we could do more, but those are some other ideas bubbling up.
Anything, Ms. Turner?
I'm very supportive of the concepts you've talked about. I like the tie-in to economic development, and I think there's some items that we might be able to do to help provide support through those, through that lens.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Sorry, there was someone behind you. Mr. Ward, do you have additional comments? Come on up, please, so we can make sure our listeners at home can.
Yeah, I think you touched on what I was going to say. As an entity that does a lot of programs with the Children's Center, we recognize that we have a lot of kids there who, their parents could not go to work if they didn't have the Children's Center. There's no other situation like that around. So all the thing I was going to say is maybe as we move forward, there's opportunities to talk about how economic development works with the Children's Center, because I know as someone who's going to be trying to pull the workforce in very soon, that resources like the Children's Center is going to be necessary for me to attract talent to come and do what we need to do out there. And just that's you were getting where I was going when after she came up. So I just wanted to say that I think there's opportunities there, because this is a really, really deep issue for people who are working on the island. So I just wanted to lend my support.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ahmad.
Chair,
Thank you.
Yes,
Can I make another strange
Sure.
stretch of idea?
of course.
So in looking at how supportive this is of our workforce, which supports our tourism industry, I'm wondering if there's any sort of string that ties this to ATAX funding. Okay, I'm just going to throw that wild idea out
We've
there.
applied for ATAX funding in the past, and we're told that childcare does not
Did not qualify.
Correct. And I'll just throw in, we are working, the Children's Center, in conjunction with several others, with Soloco, in looking at an opportunity to promote from the state a tri-share program where an employer, along with the state and parents, are helping to afford some of those costs. The other thing I will share is we're working with United Way Community Foundation of the Low Country in Beaufort County on their self-sustainability initiative, and childcare rates number 3 in roadblocks to individual self-sustainability. And all of that bears out in how our quality of life is on this island.
Okay,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, one more thing.
Thank you.
I'm just starting to serve on the Soloco board, going to my first meeting next week. So
Then you'll hear
you
from
have
us.
another voice.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Well,
So-
may I say thank you? Thank you for your attention, for your feedback. I have
Hold
a
on.
rock star that I need to
We're not,
introduce.
we're not done. I got one more
Okay.
on my list that did not ask for any funding, but I want to at least broach the topic with the committee, and that is the USCB Event Management Hospitality Program. They have not asked for anything this year, but we do have an MOU with them that needs some attention as well. Ms. Stone, am I correct in that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, so I just want to make the committee aware, there's no action to be taken today as far as the funding amount, but look forward in the future to revisit that MOU with them, okay?
And just to clarify, we did not get an application for affiliated agency for USCB this year.
Okay,
It is my understanding, and this is probably a question for our town attorney, if a letter was sent to them or not, as it relates to the compliance and anything that needed to be provided to the town.
As of today, that has not happened.
Okay, thank you.
If you can report back to us on that, that'd be great, okay? Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, you were moving along.
No.
Go ahead.
Like I was saying, thank you so much for your time. I do want to commend Angie Stone for taking the time for reading all those MOUs and actually creating the list that you have seen. It is something that we do need to work on, and especially with our partners, make sure that we have the right documentation in place going forward. In addition to that, I want to commend Michelle Bonds. Can you please stand up and come and join us for a few minutes? Michelle joined our town last year. She actually, we had our previous senior administrator, grants administrator retire. And Michelle came and joined us from North Carolina, and she is, again, our new senior grants administrator, and she's doing an outstanding job. She has so many ideas, and she has an ability to research grants that I haven't seen before. So I just wanted to introduce Michelle, and also to make you aware that Michelle will be working on the applications starting on fiscal year 26 for affiliated agencies and ATAX. And also, she put a list together for all the comments and all the different things that you have recommended today. So she has something to show us.
All right, sounds good. Welcome, Michelle. Yes, Ms. Bryson.
I don't know where you're headed next, Mr. Chair, but what I was going to suggest is that we kind of review the list of what we're thinking about and ask the town manager for his comments at some point.
I've got my list on, my notes here to hear from Mr. Orlando, and the finance team has been taking notes of what we've been suggesting here, Ms. Bryson, so I think this is what you are looking for. You want to run us through this, Ms. Burnett, real quickly?
Sure. So the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office, the ask was $168,500. The recommendation from the committee is not to grant that request. Beaufort County Economic Development Corporation, the ask was $42,000. The committee has granted the request for $42,000. The next one is Coastal Community Development Corporation. The ask was $750,000. The committee has requested more information, and so we are going to put it as pending for now until we get additional information to be able to answer the questions that you have. As it relates to the Coastal Discovery Museum, the ask was $141,650. The committee has granted that amount. The next one is the Hilton Head Island Recreation Association. The ask was $1,252,366. The committee has granted that amount. The Low Country Regional Transportation Authority, the ask was $507,051. The committee, after discussion, you mentioned $350,000. I want to make sure and double check that that's still the amount. I know there were some conversations, so I just wanted to make sure that 350 is reflecting what you would like to recommend.
We will come back to that one once you get to the bottom line, please.
So, question mark, okay.
Okay.
The next one is the Mitchellville Preservation Project. The amount requested is $105,000, and the committee granted that amount. The next one is Sandalwood Community Food Pantry. The ask was $97,500. At this time, the committee has decided not to grant the request. Sea Turtle Patrol, $97,500 is the request. The committee granted that amount. And the last one is the Children's Center for $80,000. The committee decided not to grant that amount. So the total request was $3.2 million. As we add the amounts that we have in the FNA recommendation column, not including the pending more information and a question mark on the 350, we are at almost $2 million, $1,988,516.
Okay. it's about a 40% decrease in what was requested. Okay, so let's take up the, Low Country Regional Transportation Authority first, okay? I know we threw out the 350, we see where that lands us as a bottom line. I guess the question to the committee is, are we still comfortable with that number? Oh, I'm sorry. Take your time. Give us a moment, please.
Supportive of the 1.9.
Yeah, and I look back at prior years, it looks like if you go back to 2022, FY 2022, it was a little over 1.9 million, 23, a little over 1.9 million, 24, 2 million, 25 was higher, 3,250,000 plus. And if you take out the two allocations we made from ATAX money to CCDC and Habitat, so track 1.1 million, it's about 2.1 million. You know, I won't quarrel about a lot of money, but, you know, maybe 390,000 for LRTA, that would put us a little over 2 million. But I'm not gonna quarrel about the 40,000. It may be very important to LRTA. So that would be my only other thought, is increase that a little bit.
Hold that thought. Any comfort in moving off of that 350, Ms. Turner?
I'd like to be in a position to show a decrease in the total amount of funding.
Okay. All right. I think we're gonna stay with that 350, Ms. Bryson.
That's all right.
Okay, all right. Okay, the Coastal Community Development Corporation is not included in this 1.9 number that we're discussing. No, yes, pending. Community, not, yeah, Coastal CCDC. All right,
Make sure you weren't
yes.
talking about Coastal Discovery Museum.
Right, yeah. CDM, not CCDC,
Sure.
had too many of those acronyms.
Okay, so, with this one, obviously, Ms. Bryson was, supportive of a number there, as well as non-committee member, Mr. Alfred, okay? So, but I don't want to hold up the budgetary deliberations here, okay? So, Ms. Bryson, I'm asking if you want to make a separate motion on that particular one, or we go with zero so that we can move forward. That's,
What I was thinking is that for our number to recommend, that we go with the zero, but with the request to take a look at other possible, ATAX, if there's ATAX money that might be available for partial funding.
okay. And I think that,
Full town council look at that.
that aligns with our discussion around our ATAX distributions. You know, currently we have a process for tourism-related Turk monies to be allocated. We do not have a process for the affordable housing monies to be distributed, okay? So to Ms. Bryson's point, we'd like to see what would be available and start to put together the bones of a process to do so. At this point, I don't think that the affiliate agency process needs to have that in it. I think we're talking about two separate animals here, okay? And give us the opportunity to weigh into a process that is more aligned with our finding home that we continue to discuss at a high level, okay? So, you go with that? Okay, so at this point, it looks like the 1,988,516 is the number that we are dealing with, okay? Now, and Mr. Alfred, I'll give you an opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation as far as the number that we have? No? Okay. Mr. Orlando, could you approach, please, sir?
is afternoon now.
Okay, sir. We're just looking for you to react to the discussion as far as the amounts that are being proposed and how it aligns with the overall budget process that you are currently working on.
Yes, and you asked me for my reaction, and I always said, and as I've said before getting into this room, it is the will of council how you fund your affiliated agencies. I took a look at the FY '22 actual distribution for affiliated agencies. It was $2.1 million. It went up in 2024 to 3.5, and the actual 2024 was close to 2.4, at least on here. So I believe we're going in the right direction, in my opinion. I always take a look at budget from a whole bunch of different lenses. I think a town manager will always get up and say, yeah, we're zero-based, right? It's a need versus a trend. And I always try to take a look backwards and see if we need it. And I always ask that question, do we need it? And really the hard question to answer is, what if we don't fund it? And so I think the process that's in place, especially with more than just the committee members participating, has been healthy. It's been helpful to me. I see where your heads are at. We do have a lot of work to do, right? The application process, we know why it started. It's a public benefit, different than a affiliation of agency, Island Rec being a good example. So I think the applications are what they are. They're sound. We can get a better process in place. But as I react to a $2 million budget ask, it will plug into our budget. I will find the funds. It is not so much that I can't find them. And I think that's what you're looking for. I have to unfund or uncut some of the budget planning that I've been doing. I have a balanced budget right now. It was anticipating less expenditure. However, I can calibrate, right? So I think that's important. I'm looking at the long-term sustainability of our funds, right? Especially post-COVID. Everyone keeps saying, the new normal. I don't know what that is yet because we don't have many years in the rearview mirror yet to truly know what that means. But we're in good shape. We are always cautious and strategic as we plan our money. If I have some concerns with this, you will all be the first to know.
Any questions of the town manager? No? Okay, Mr. Orlando, we will continue to get better at this. I want to commend you and your staff for the information that they have provided us. I like to be known for short meetings, but a lot of money involved here and a lot of good work involved here, a lot of need involved here. So we just want to thank the staff for putting in the effort to bring us good information so that we can make good decisions. So thank you.
And I appreciate that. And if I could jump in, a huge thank you, a very big and special thank you to Miss Adriana, her whole team, Michelle. She brings Michelle up, but we can easily say the same about Adriana and our applicants, right? The folks that have taken time to explain not what they need only, but why they are requesting the funds. So I think it's commendable, and especially to the three of you sitting up there. This is a better process this year than last, and I believe it'll be even more clear next year.
Okay.
I will ask for some clarity as we move forward, straight to budget or to town council. That's my only unknown. As you make your motion, I would ask for that.
Through the motion, you want to know what we're going to do with these recommendations. Okay.
It could be a separate one, but it would sure help me moving out of committee. As of last year, we plugged the dollars straight into the budget. And this year, there were some questions pertaining to, should this be a council decision prior to me bringing budget forward first reading? Did I confuse you?
No, it's nothing. No, it's nothing.
Right?
Oh, got it. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Orlando. Are we clear on what the town manager is asking us? So what I'm suggesting is, as we give the motion on the number amount, that we also consider that we are in the process of meeting with the town manager about budget, that these numbers, we've had most of council here for most of the meeting, that these numbers have been vetted, that they go into what he is balancing, okay, and be appropriate for the first reading that we will see at whatever date we have on the books. That's what I'm suggesting to the committee. Want to get your thoughts on that before we get into official motions on it.
I agree with that. I think we've had a lot of opportunity for discussion here, and except for the mayor, the rest of town council has been here and had a chance to weigh in. So I see this as part of the budget process and going forward, and I think we ought to do that this year.
Any reaction?
Yes, we had originally talked about perhaps going through this again during the workshop process, but I think, based off of the feedback from our other town council members, they were supportive of this process and supportive of our decisions. So I don't think we need to add extra time to cover these again.
Okay, all right.
So, Mr. Chair, I can make a motion based on that if we're ready.
I am ready.
I move that we recommend to the full town council to include in the first reading of the FY 25-26 budget, $1,988,516 for affiliated agencies as set forth on the report from our staff on our screen.
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Please raise your right hand. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we've got a couple of more items to take care of before we leave. And it's already 1:15. We've got a 3 o'clock town council meeting. I know we have the financial report on the agenda. Ms. Turner, are you willing to make a motion that we amend the agenda to postpone that item until our next meeting?
I would like to make a motion to postpone the financial results presentation for this meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. And we've had a lot of discussion around improving the process. I think we said that quite a few times during this meeting, but I want to make some official action around that. If Ms. Bryson can help us with that, that'd be great.
Yes. I'm ready to make a motion. I move that we recommend to the full town council that it requests that the town manager develop a policy for funding of affiliated agencies, including the process, and that also the town manager review with his staff the memorandums of understanding with affiliated agencies.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. You have something else, Mr. Orlando? Yes.
Yes, I had one question, point of clarification. The motion read or was voted on that was adding the affiliated agency funding request to first reading of budget. Was that clear?
Yes.
So my question is this coming to the town council agenda prior to first reading of budget?
Yeah.
Okay. Message
But
heard loud and
questions-
clear. That was clear.
Questions can arise during the workshop discussions,
Sure.
which are
Yes,
between the
ma'am.
first and second reading.
Thank you. That helps.
Yep. All right. We're good? No, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work, your team's hard work. And the only thing left on the agenda now is public comment. No one signed up. Is anyone here that would like to approach the council on anything that is not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to adjournment. Thank you all for your attention and your patience. We will see you in a couple, yeah.